COVID-19!
COVID-19!
I blow the wind of God.
The wind of God
on you.
on you.
You are destroyed forever,
You are destroyed forever.
and you'll never be back.
Hi, welcome to another Face Reading Caricature video. Today I'm going to be doing this guy. This is Kenneth Copeland. He's an American televangelist, and he was kind of famous. He became kind of viral at the beginning of the COVID pandemic because of a clip that you just saw where he banishes COVID by blowing it away. And I kind of thought this is the sort of person that's going to end up as the President of the United States of America at some point. So we may as well kind of get a handle on him and try and analyse what's going on with him. He's got a very unique kind of face. And I guess the first thing I noticed anyway was these weird eyes that he's got. Very sort of vacant and very kind of demonic almost. There's just something so strange about his eyes. Also, for somebody who is, I guess, a representative of God himself, he's got a very evil-looking face. He's just got a very angry, kind of scowly sort of look to him. These thin lips, or rather, he doesn't really have lips at all, really, which is a sign of someone who's very emotionally reserved. The sunken cheeks, always a sign of someone who wasn't nurtured in childhood and finds it difficult to express or accept love or affection. So he hasn't really got the sort of face you would associate with someone who was genuinely aligned with God in some way. But weirdly, I did notice this thing with his ear, and I'll find a better picture of this somewhere. Here, in this picture, when this part of the ear, this little inner lump, this is called ant helix, and if it's very pronounced, it's sometimes a sign of someone who feels very spiritual, which is kind of what you get here on his right hand side. But when we look at pictures on his left hand side, we notice that the ant helix doesn't really protrude that much. So we'll be having a little look at the two sides of his face in a moment. The other thing about him is he's a very square-headed person. Basically means his head is almost as long as it is wide. This is usually the sign of someone who's very career-driven. It's a head shape that's kind of associated with leaders or people that are kind of the head of a team. If you imagine like an army sergeant, that kind of thing. And it also fits in with these low eyebrows he's got. These are referred to as coach's eyebrows, which is often good if you're a coach and you can inspire your protégés to achieve their sporting aspirations or whatever. But sometimes there can be a negative side, which is where you see your charges as actually being extensions of your own ego. He can kind of use his influence to manipulate people, as we see with these televangelists, to get people to give them money. Another thing we notice is these lines here. They're officially called nasolabial furrows, but they're referred to in face reading as either communication lines or purpose lines. It's someone who's got a very strong purpose in life, a very strong sense of where they want to go or a mission that they're trying to achieve. In his case, he does have quite a lot of influence over people. He's seen as something of an influential orator of some kind. We've also got this tiny little line here under the chin. I'm going to find a better picture of that somewhere. You can see it there. You can kind of see it here, but I know there's a better picture. That's the best picture of it here, so we can, if I just draw a circle around it. This little line on his chin is a sign that you're kind of using up your chi energy a little bit too much. It's a sign that it's perhaps time for you to retire. Perhaps you're living more excessively than you should be. You've got to bear in mind, this guy, he's 84 years old. So this line is sometimes a sign that the body wants you to kind of slow down a little bit. Maybe retire, or at least learn to incorporate some more relaxation into your life, or some more leisure activities into your life. He's also got this very bulbous kind of nose. And weirdly, this is the sign of someone who's very materialistic. But again, this is something that can also bite people on the bum later in life, because when you put all your value in material possessions, you're not really putting value into anything that's intrinsically of any use. With here, you see this ant's helix isn't very protruding in these pictures. And we also see here he doesn't have a line under his chin because he's a young man here. So here we are, his divided face. On our left hand side we've got his public face, on the other side we sort of see his private face. Really, when you look at the faces all together, this is the original photo here, there's not really any difference. He's actually got a very symmetrical face. There's not really much difference, and this is usually seen as a good thing. It just shows that someone is presenting themselves exactly how they are. The only kind of difference is on his public face we see a much rounder kind of shaped head, and this is often a sign of somebody who's trying to present themselves in a friendlier way. Often a round head is seen as good for someone who works in sales. A round head is not often seen as someone who's more trustworthy. This is why a lot of cartoon characters are sort of, when you draw kind of cartoony characters, if I was able to draw Mickey Mouse or something, you know, everything's made up of curvy sort of shapes kind of thing. There we go. Perfect. So round features are seen as being more trustworthy, more friendly. Even this kind of rounded hairline is usually associated with people that are very close to their families, whereas on his private face everything's much more square, much more rigid, much more authoritative, stubborn, perhaps even slightly aggressive. But generally speaking, the features don't change all that much. He's pretty consistent, really. Again, you can slightly see within the ear, you can see the ant's helix sticking out more on these ears, whereas on the left side you can't really see them, they're sort of inside the ear. Now this I think is interesting because these are associated with people that are very spiritual. They get into energy work and things like that. So on his public side it's almost like he's trying to show that he has this spiritual side. He works in energy healing, or he's into holistic care, whereas the private side, there's not really as much evidence of that. So I found that kind of interesting. We also notice here these big lines down here. These are lines of disappointment. Whenever you see someone with these kind of lines, almost like forcing down the side of the mouth, these are lines of someone who's been very disappointed. And often, ironically, you get these lines if you smile too much when you don't want to. So if you're putting on a public face of happiness, if you're the sort of person that fakes a lot of smiling, you're more likely to end up with these disappointment lines. In ancient Chinese culture, they kind of advised you not to expect too much from life. Don't make too many demands from life, because if you do and your demands don't come true, if your dreams don't come true, you're going to end up very disappointed. It was far better to sort of remain slightly detached from life and just content with what you have. Now you've got these downward kind of lines, just kind of almost like dragging his mouth down, drags his whole face down almost. He's got a very angry and bitter countenance. Another thing I noticed about him is that he looks a little bit like Alfred E. Newman, and this guy on the right hand side, this is Flat Top Jones from the 1990 movie Dick Tracy. It's not a very good movie, and it took me a while to kind of guess who he was reminding me of, but yeah, it's kind of a combination of these two guys. If these two guys had a kid, they'd probably end up looking very much like this. As I'm going to be caricaturing him, we're going to be listening to his 1957 hit single. I believe it charted at number 17 in the American charts. I'm going to have to check that. But it's his 1957 hit single. It's called Pledge of Love. Without any further ado, let's get to doing the line work. I've decided to use this photo as my reference here because I wanted to sort of capture his sort of demonic smile kind of thing. So I'm basically going to fill out the line work as we enjoy the Pledge of Love. Right, so there's my little sketch for today. After having kind of had a look at his features, I'm kind of more of the persuasion that he genuinely believes that he is a kind of messenger from God or something. But I wonder if there is some kind of pathology that he labours under that kind of encourages him to believe things that might otherwise be seen as delusional to somebody else. So if you like this video, give it a like. If you hate it, give it a thumbs down. If you want to see more, then subscribe to the channel. I haven't quite decided who I'm doing next week, but if you've got any suggestions, leave a comment and I'm always open to ideas. So thank you very much for watching this video and I hope to see you again. Goodbye.
Give me a chance here, Inside Edition. I love your eyes.
Again, getting back to the comment, you said that you don't like to fly commercial because you don't want to get into a tube with a bunch of demons. Do you really believe that human beings are demons?
No, I do not. And don't you ever say I did. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but principalities and powers.
To those critics that say that a preacher should not be living a life of luxury, what is your response to that?
They're wrong.